Hello and welcome to the Push to Pass podcast. This is a new podcast by myself and Reef. We are both second year students from the University of South Wales and we are just trying to get our way into motorsport media and more particularly F1. So as the season has just started and we have just had the Australian Grand Prix, today we're just going to be doing a quick review of that race and going through all the major talking points from it. So Reef, first of all, what's your thoughts from it?
It was a nightmare for rookies, particularly. I think this year is quite unique where there's a lot of rookies, which is exciting and great for everyone. Personally, for me, I like that there's such a change. New faces on the grid, new talent emerging. It's what the feeder series are for, and they finally delivered new talent. But not an ideal race to start your F1 career.
No, I think Alex Albon summed it up perfectly before the weekend. He said it was literally nobody driven on the wet or intermediate tyres, so good luck to the rookies. And yeah, it didn't really fare the best for them, so really the only place we can start is the unfortunate case of Isaac Hadjar and his formation lap crash and obviously everything that led up to it. In the aftermath, we saw the quite wholesome yet quite sad scenes with Hadjar and Anthony Hamilton, who's Lewis Hamilton's father, consoling him in the paddock afterwards, but also then Helmut Marko decided to chip in. So yeah, do we feel sorry a bit for Hadjar?
I do, in particular. I mean, I think eyebrows were raised when he got the drive in the first place. It was all very last minute, with obviously Perez leaving. And obviously he's not helped this case there. I think there's a lot of talent there with Hadjar. I hope he's given a chance, but this weekend's not got off to a good start, and if there's anyone that you don't want to be falling out with, it's Helmut Marko.
From what I've saw of him in the junior sort of F2 is really the only main sort of area I've seen him in. He gives me a lot of a sense of Yuki in his early career, where I feel he will have a lot of speed, but he will potentially this season maybe just push it a bit too hard. And I think that's all we really saw this weekend. I think literally just coming out of the first turns, I think he just got a bit excited and just put a bit too much throttle on. Obviously the conditions were awful and we saw so many drivers go off, but then you see the scenes of him walking back through the paddock, clutching his helmet, clearly upset. And Anthony Hamilton really looked like a bit of a father figure to him, going over and, just trying to consolidate him. But then you have Helmut Marko. I can't remember the exact quote he said. I think he said it was something like embarrassing or something.
He called it embarrassing.
Great.
Yeah, I mean, I think qualifying proved that there's definitely raw pace there. Admittedly, the Racing Bulls did have pace this weekend with Yuki pushing up towards the top 5. But 11th place in your first ever F1 quali, narrowly missing out on Q3, is a really, really good effort from Hadjar. I'm expecting big things this year if he's given a chance.
Yeah, just remind me to never predict anything good from him again, because I predicted him to score points and then he crashed on the formation lap.
I did see your TikToks. That was quite funny.
My predictions were awful, but yeah, even more crashes. Quite notably, there was only 2 or 3 rookies. Well, we call them rookies. The only rookies who actually finished were Behrman and Antonelli. And, most of the other rookie crashes I sort of felt just looked like a bit of inexperience, bar Liam Lawson.
Yeah.
I don't like that second Red Bull car. There's something going on there.
I just think that car's a dog now. I think Max is supremely talented and he's well acquainted with the car, so he's able to extract everything from it. But that second car is it's so problematic. And throw in admittedly not a rookie, but throw in an F1 novice into that role. Liam's in for a really tough year, I think.
And don't get me wrong, that could almost suit Liam. He seems like a driver who he likes to have a challenge. He likes to probably have the odds stacked against him and he wants to prove people wrong, but it's hard to prove people wrong when you physically cannot get into groove with a car and you can't get any performance out of it. Like, I think he qualified P18 or P17, and you look on the seams things, you saw Antonelli in the Mercedes qualified P16, you think, it's the first race, it's a rookie thing, we can let that slide. But you look also, Lawson has had, albeit not 2 full seasons, he raced in 2023 and 2024 and he is a good driver. So I think there is so much more wrong with that second Red Bull seat, and I don't want it to be a case of, but I think it could be quite a difficult season for Liam.
looking at his weekend on face value, he's probably the biggest loser of this weekend. He missed, I think it was FP3 he missed, and then he qualified 18th, and then crashed out in the race.
It was all in the race as well. He just, like we saw with Antonelli, even when he started back, he moved up through the field, albeit they were crashes and people were retiring left, right and centre. But Antonelli literally just kept his car going in a straight line and just made the opportunities come. But Liam, there was a point in the race he was just stuck like battling Haas's, and that's not what Red Bull are going to want, not what Red Bull are going to need, especially after losing the constructors last season. Another rookie who, unfortunately, up until his crash, did impress me was Gabriel Bortoleto.
Agreed, completely.
His crash did seem a bit weird, though. Have you seen the replay?
I've not seen the replay.
So,
no.
As his car spun round, his right rear suspension seemed to fail. So some people are thinking his crash might have been a result of that, or his car might have potentially had a problem. But getting into Q2 in a Sauber in your first qualifying session, it's not quite bad. And in a race like Australia where there's so many crashes, he could have well been on for points.
100%. Out-qualifying his veteran teammate as well. Hulkenberg, I've got a lot of good things to say about Hulkenberg, but pre-season I predicted that Bortoleto is going to wipe the floor with him.
Yeah, I had really big hopes for Bortoleto coming into this year, and then I saw in testing how tracked the Sauber was, and I was thinking, oh god, this is destined for a P19, P20 finish near F every week. But I think Haas might have beat them for that. It's probably the first time I've ever seen a Sauber actually look quicker than a car. The Haas looks awful.
Well, you can always rely on Haas to sort of rear up the end of the grid. I'm sure they'll be competitive in certain tracks. They usually are. They'll usually pull out like a rogue 7th and 9th finish in like 1 or 2 races just to keep afloat. But Behrman's an interesting one for me. He's come in with a lot of hype. He was obviously trusted with the Ferrari drive last year, and lots of Haas. Well, I think, did he have 2 Haas appearances as well?
Yeah, he did Baku for Magnussen when Magnussen was banned, and he did Brazil when Magnussen was ill.
Yeah, amongst other like test drives and free practice sessions. And obviously he's a young lad. He's a Brit as well, which I think really does help with his case. But I don't quite know if he showed enough in F2. Admittedly, his season last year was interrupted, but I think he finished like 14th.
Yeah, it was a difficult year last year because him and Antonelli were signed up for Prima, and obviously that's usually a golden ticket to a championship in F2. But something about the Prima team last year just didn't click. Like, their results and their performances were just far too inconsistent of what you'd expect of a front-running Formula 2 team. So I think a lot of F1 fans sort of wrote off him and Antonelli's F2 season just to sort of, we know how capable they are, we don't really need to look back on the results. But, apart from what we've seen of Behrman so far, don't get me wrong, he was absolutely exceptional in the Ferrari in Jeddah last year, but Baku he didn't really do much. And then Brazil, there's a Drive to Survive clip of Ayo Komatsu even saying, look, you've gone off twice, that's not good enough, we need to learn. So I think that is the big case. I think obviously it's the first race of the season, you don't want to get too harsh on rookies, but having a rookie thrown into a Haas who crashes in the first practice session, it doesn't really bode well for your sort of first impression.
It doesn't bode well. I mean, obviously you'll give him time. I think he will be given time, unlike some other rookies, particularly Doohan and Hadjar. I think Behrman's going to be around for a while. He's got that Ferrari back in. I think it's plain as day what Ferrari are going to try to do. They're going to try replace him with Hamilton eventually. And more power to him. I'm interested to see how this year plays out.
So moving on from the rookies, you spoke about a certain someone being a biggest loser. Who was your biggest loser from this race?
I think it has to be Liam Lawson. There is a few, but I'll give Doohan a pass because he's a true rookie.
Yeah,
never had a race before, and I'll give Hadjar a pass because he had a good qualifying performance. But I think it has to be Lawson, just because, as you said, he's got that Red Bull expectation, even though I actually don't think that car is that competitive, I just think Max is an alien. He has to be the biggest loser this weekend.
I'm torn because for me, his weekend was absolutely horrible. But I wasn't impressed with the way that Carlos Sainz went out.
No?
No, that's, to me, look, the conditions were up against it. Obviously, we saw lots of drivers going off. You saw even experienced drivers like Fernando lose it. But the corner which he lost it on, it just seemed so unnecessary to have that sort of spike in. I think he even described it on the radio. He was like, I don't know why I've had a spike of revs. So maybe it might have been a mechanical issue. Maybe I'm being too harsh. But I feel like if Sainz stays in the race and then he is able to, benefit from the rest of the safety cars, benefit from all the chaos, I think Williams potentially could have left Australia scoring 20 plus points. And that's probably, I think that is more than they've scored probably in about the last 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And, a driver like Carlos with so much expectation on his shoulder, and people were expecting Carlos to absolutely, not use, but they were expecting him to just absolutely blow Albon out the water. I think Albon actually gave a really good account for himself this weekend, as if to sort of say, look, I am still you and I'm still a good enough driver. But yeah, I think Carlos will be open for a much different sort of weekend next week in China. Who's your winner? Who's your biggest?
Biggest winner would have to be Norris.
Yeah.
Purely because this is exactly what he needed to do. He's faced criticism before for being perhaps a bit of a bottler, from myself as well. Sometimes I think he's had the better car for a while now, probably for at least a year. McLaren have been the best car on the grid, and he's not always made winning look easy. Sometimes his race results have looked quite difficult, but he's done exactly what he needed to do. He's set the precedent. McLaren are the best car. Lights the flag victory in very, very hard conditions. Kept Max at bay. I thought it was really impressive. But if we're going away from the obvious, then probably Kimi Antonelli.
Yeah, I was going to say, I made a TikTok about Lando and it's blown up and everyone's decided to try have a civil war with each other in the comments, just saying, because I said something about Lando's win. It just felt different. There was periods where Oscar closed up behind him. I think he got within literally about 3 tenths of a second. And in seasons gone by, you look at that and you go, Lando's probably going to get past you. But it just felt different. I just didn't feel at all like Lando was at risk. And there was points in the safety car where he managed it really well. Sometimes he went early to get temperature in the tyres. Sometimes he left it a bit late to try and cause a bit of chaos. I just think they was nigh on about the perfect drive. If he hadn't have gone off when both McLarens decided to try audition for WRC, then I think that would have been the perfect drive. But no, I have to agree. I think my winner of the weekend was Kimi Antonelli. Qualifying wasn't the best, P16. He was unlucky. I think it was only about 700ths of a second he missed out on. And then to keep your nose clean, to not have any incidents in a race like that, and to come out P4 from P16, even though there were 6 or 7 cars gone out, I think that's showing pretty much how good he is going to be.
That pass on Albon as well.
Oh yeah,
have you seen that?
I don't want to. Mercedes fans will probably kill me for saying this, but he gives me such Verstappen vibes.
He really does. A ballsy young teenager.
He's not, like we saw it in Monza last year. He's not afraid to put a car on the wall to show how good he is. And I think that, especially that move on Albon, he's literally, when I was watching it, I was like, this is so much Max Brazil 2016. Just in the rain, he's just finding grip. He looks like he's just driving on easy mode. And to be fair, he kept his nose clean. No one was expecting him to win the race. A podium would have been a great start for him, but realistically, P4 is probably the maximum he would have expected. And, he delivered it. So I don't think Mercedes have anything really more they can ask from him. So one of the big controversies this weekend, which sort of went under the radar a bit, was I don't know if you saw it, Lando Norris overtaking a recovery truck.
Yes.
seeing that in the sport still makes me like incredibly scared.
Makes your blood boil, doesn't it?
It makes you feel sick. Like you watch it, and I think it was after either Alonso went off, or I think two cars might have been off at the same time, and you're watching it and you see Burt Mylander just cut the chicane, and Martin Brundle raised a great point where he said, look, Burt Mylander can do that, he can go across, there's no worries. Lando Norris and the rest of the grid cannot do that because the risk of them getting a puncture is absolutely incredible. And like, why are we allowing a car to drive probably within about 2-3 feet of a recovery truck on track? Is still beyond me.
It is, and especially when you've seen so many incidents like Sainz's, where a little blip of the throttle and you're out, you've spun in those conditions.
Yeah, we saw it 2 or 3, Sainz, Lawson, Hadjar, all of them were literally the slightest too much of pressure on your throttle and you're going round. And this was, it's under the safety car, I understand that, so it's a bit more controlled, but it's still wet conditions. No one knows what these cars are going to do. And, we saw it in, I can't remember if it was last year or the year before, but the incident with Gasly in Japan, when he went flying past a recovery vehicle, and people were outraged then, but then for some reason all the TV pundits seem to be saying, well, we don't want to be throwing out a red flag for everything, and we want to keep races going. And I understand that point, but if you cannot avoid a car driving past marshals, driving past a recovery vehicle, driving past recovery trucks on track, then just throw the red flag out. When Sainz went off, the drivers went through the pit lane, that's fine, you can keep that out because no one's gonna drive past it. It's a mandatory thing, they have to go through the pit lane. But if you're getting to a point where cars are having to follow the safety car around track and are driving past a recovery truck on track, why not just throw out the red flag?
It's how many times do you want to tempt fate, isn't it? It's so possible that could happen again, and I don't want to allude to what I'm talking about, but it's a realistic thing where someone could crash and hit one of those vehicles and it puts everyone in danger.
100%. Nothing. They won't be changed until someone is seriously hurt or killed.
And there is really no excuse for it this time because they know exactly what happens.
We learned from it. Obviously, the incident we're talking about was when Joe Bianchi lost his life, and the uproar that caused of the fact that they were able to even be in that situation. And this is why we're seeing more and more red flags, is because we don't want to put these drivers at risk, but then we're still putting them at risk. Like on the weekend, I'm one for saying, look, let's keep red flags to a minimum. Only put a red flag out if there's marshals on track, there's loads of debris, if there's been like a multi-car pile-up and cars can't avoid it. Fair enough, red flag, we'll just postpone the race for like half an hour, 45 minutes, get it all back up and going. Use the safety car as and when it's appropriate. Like the Sainz one, that was appropriate to use the safety car because the cars go through the pit lane, no one's put in danger. But the rest of them, especially on a street circuit like Albert Park, it's so hard to avoid not throwing out a red flag and not putting drivers in danger.
That's the thing with these street races. There's so many of them now that, of course, there's going to be red flags. As you said, they're just not wide. They're not proper circuits. They're not made for crashes necessarily, some of these places.
So where do we go from here? Do we make... Because obviously say if this incident happened at a Silverstone or a Barcelona, there's loads of runoff area, there's loads of service roads, there's cranes up next to the track where they can obviously get rid of cars. So the street circuits need to be made where there's service roads where you can push a car off, or it's easier to maybe put a crane there or a recovery vehicle there so it's less dangerous. Or do the FAA basically go, right, the minute there's another car which isn't the safety car, the medical car, or any Formula 1 car on track, the session is red flagged?
It's going to have to be the second one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you can't... these places are towns before they're circuits. You can't just dig up a circuit for one weekend of racing. You can't dig up Albert Park to make a whole new road when primarily it's a park, Like, it's only a circuit for a small amount of time.
It's just... how we are still in 2025. Don't get me wrong, F1 is safer than it has ever been, and the likelihood of us ever seeing a driver severely injured or hurt or anything like that again, it takes a Romain Grosjean Bahrain freak accident where that is something which it happens in the sport, but it's also something we can't control. Having a recovery vehicle on track and having F1 cars which are nigh on drivers sat on the floor going around them at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour, which is still it's still quick enough to be seriously hurt.
Yep.
We can control that as a sport, and that can be put under limitations.
Most definitely.
It baffles me. Right, so what we're going to be doing now is ranking our the finished top 10, so all the point scorers in an ABC. Do you want to do A, B, C, D, E?
Go on then.
A, B. Oh, go on then. Or do you want to do A star? A star, A, B, C, D.
Yes.
Yeah, because that's what it's like a tier list, isn't it? People do an S tier, but
Yeah. Cool.
shut up. So P10, Lewis Hamilton.
I will give Lewis I'll give him a C.
Yeah, I was going to say a C. I don't think it wasn't terrible, but
It wasn't a nightmare drive, and I think a lot of it, especially in the race, was strategy related.
yeah, and you could tell through a lot of the radio messages he's still learning that car. Like,
Yeah.
they're saying to him, like, press this button, do this, press this, change this dial, and he's literally going, do me a favour, shut up, let me learn.
Yeah.
And, yeah, qualifying, I think qualifying 8th.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were 7th and 8th when they both Ferraris. It's not the end of the world, Ferrari clearly are lagging a bit of pace, but P10, he still scored points. Look, he's going to get better throughout the season. He's going to grow. He's going to adapt to the car more. But, yeah, I don't think it was a nightmare. I just think it was a bit middle of the road.
Agreed.
P9, Oscar Piastri.
A case of what could have been.
Yeah, I'm going to give him an A.
Okay. I'd have given him a B.
I feel like I want to give him an A because his pace in that sort of literally up until when he went off track, he looked incredible and he looked really quick.
Yeah, I think
that's the quickest he's been to Lando in a long time.
Yeah, I think he was going to give Lando problems.
Yeah, and even in qualifying, he was 0.08 of a second off, I think.
Yeah,
and like you gone into the season, you would have assumed Lando to get pole by literally like miles, but obviously it wasn't the case. But then he had the spin,
and that's why I'm dropping him down to a B.
I'll go with a B. It could have been avoided. Both McLaren. It was so weird to see both McLarens go off though. Like Lando, fair enough for Lando to go off. He's the first car in the pack, and this was when they had like the rain was just coming back in, and seeing him go off, and you're going, oh, Lando's gone off, and then you just see Oscar absolutely hairing it across the gravel, and you're going, well, he hasn't learned, and then Max nearly goes off. So yeah, I think he, in terms of pace and in terms of like outright speed, he couldn't have done much more. It's just that one mistake really did let him down.
Yeah, and as far as that overtake on Hamilton, he probably deserves an A star.
Yeah,
unreal.
I'm really excited for Oscar this year.
Yeah, me too.
I think, like last season, we saw glimpses of how good he can be. I think this season we are going to see like the real Oscar.
If he sorts out his tyre management, he's going to be a massive problem.
P8, Charles Leclerc.
It's probably about the same as Hamilton, I think.
I can't remember Charles doing anything except for staying out on dry tyres when it was wet.
Yeah, which isn't necessarily his fault.
And he had a leak which he didn't know what the leak was.
Just a very bland performance. I've said quite a few times to friends that this needs to be Ferrari's year.
Yeah, it sort of feels like they, after 2021 where it was Red Bull, Mercedes, then we had 2022, everyone was like, oh my God, Ferrari, great, Charles won like 3 of the opening 4 races, and people were like, right, it's Ferrari's year. Then it wasn't. Then 2023, people go, it's probably not this year. Then last year, Red Bull looked off it. People are going, right, Ferrari's year. Then you're going into this year, and people are going again, it's Ferrari's year.
It needs to be. I think last year before the regs, throw everything at it. But then again, it looks like McLaren have absolutely aced this car.
I feel so sorry for Charles. I think he is such a good driver.
I rate him very highly.
It's just Ferrari are just such. they're not even a nothing team. They're just so hit and miss. Like, some weekends they can look absolutely incredible. Others, they look like this.
I see them picking up a few race wins this year, though.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Like, as much as it's been a curse, you can never count out Charles in Monaco.
No,
like
not at all.
he is fantastic there. The same with like a Lewis in Brazil, Lewis in Silverstone. He's always been historically really good there. But I think that's always sort of been in Ferrari's nature. They're always guaranteed. If McLaren have an off day, or Verstappen's potentially having had a poor qualifier, and then I think that's when Ferrari know they have to. I see Ferrari in the same way I saw Mercedes last year. Whereas if the top two aren't there, they have to pick up the pieces.
Yeah. So, bringing it back, I'll give Charles a C.
Yeah, C I think is fair. P7, Nico Hülkenberg.
Brilliant drive.
Double A star.
Brilliant drive.
How has he scored 6 points?
It's a fantastic drive. His teammate kicked his ass in qualifying. Definitely gave him a wake-up call. And it was just a really steady drive. Just exactly what you'd want from him. He's the veteran. He shouldn't be putting it in the wall. He didn't put it in the wall. And he's got 6 points.
And he was only a second off 6th place.
Honestly, a really, really good effort.
You look at... If you ask anyone coming into the season, do you think Sauber are going to score more than 3 or 4 points? They probably would have laughed at you, and Hülkenberg's done it in one race.
Yeah, and I think it gives them hope.
Oh, definitely. Races of attrition, if you have someone... Like, I think that's where... The closest you can put this to is Williams last year. This is where Williams struggled, when people were crashing and, you had one car left in the race. If Williams were left with Sargent, they had no hope. Whereas now, if Sauber are left with Hülkenberg, it's like, Christ, we could probably, we can score points if teams are crashing. And to keep your nose clean, to not have anything go wrong, to not have any incidents, especially in a race where you're doing so many pit stops, and Sauber have been awful at pit stops, to have them all go correct and come out P7, it's nigh on. I would have gone as far to say impossible to predict.
Yeah.
P6, Lance Stroll.
Also, it's also a good drive.
Oh,
it is for someone that quite often bins it and gets questioned about his driving ability a lot of the time. That was a very good drive in a very difficult situation. So I feel like it's got to be an A.
Yeah, I wouldn't. I think it's a bit different to put Lance in an A star when, the Aston Martin obviously isn't the best car, but it's better than a Sauber. So you'd expect it to sort of pick up the pieces. But it's not taken away from, Lance's efforts. Lance has always been quite I wouldn't say phenomenal driver, but he's always been a really good driver in the rain. We saw that in Turkey in 2020 when he got his pole position. He's always looked more than competent in the wet. And yeah, to pick up points like that in an Aston Martin car, which is definitely not anywhere near its best, it's got to be an A for him.
Agreed.
P5, Alexander Albon.
Brilliant race.
Yeah,
really
he was... If he had held on to that P4, I think it would have been absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I mean, you alluded to it earlier that this race really was like a stamp of I'm still here.
Yeah,
I'm just as good as Carlos Sainz. Give me my flowers, sort of thing.
I'm gonna give him an A.
Agreed. Yeah.
Did he start 5th?
Yeah.
No, he started 6th.
Yeah.
Tsunoda started 5th. What happened to Tsunoda?
It all fell apart. It all fell apart at the end. I feel really bad for him because he was on for a brilliant drive as well.
Yeah, he was one of the ones who gambled on the staying out on dries, didn't he?
Yeah, he would have finished in 4th.
Yeah.
Which it happens.
Williams are quick. I will give them that. I thought it was just a case of bit of test and hype, but they do look good this year.
They could be 4th best.
100. They remind me very much of what like a Racing Point used to be like, or like what a Renault used to be like back when 7th, even 6th place with how many rookies we've got in the top teams now. 6th place, between 6th and 10th, Williams could easily have 2 cars in that every week.
Yeah,
I feel they'll have a good week.
They're the best of the rest, aren't they?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Any time the top lads have a bad day, they need to be picking up the pieces.
Andrea Kimi Antonelli, P4.
It's an A star.
It's an A star.
definitely.
Rookie drive, P16 to P4, no incidents, ballsy overtakes.
Yeah, we touched on it already. I think
Yeah.
he's the mustard. He's good.
P3, George Russell. He started third. No, he started fourth.
B.
Yeah, I'd even go. Yeah, I'd say B.
I'd say you'd expect him to be there with the Ferraris down the order. He's beat his teammate, which is what he needed to do first and foremost. But it's just a B, isn't it? It is just a B.
Yeah, I don't think the Mercedes could have took him any further than that. George is a great driver, don't get me wrong, but he still finished 8 seconds off Verstappen in the Red Bull, which is a car which you'd expect the Mercedes to be closer to. But, it's still a podium. It's still him picking up probably the best result he could have got. So, yeah, I think it'd be solid for them. P2, Max Verstappen.
It's an A-star.
I want to go A.
I think people won't realise because he's so talented, but that car's a dog.
Yeah, the only reason he's anywhere near a top 3 is purely because of how good of a driver he is.
And it's annoying because there's a lot of things that he does that I don't agree with, but you cannot deny that he is amazing at extracting the good out of a bad car.
It's like it was really weird because in the opening stint, I think Piastri passed him and he dropped like 13 seconds off the back of both McLarens. And then it comes to the end of the race after the safety car restart. There's literally 5 laps left, and Max is close to within 7/10 of Lando. And you're like, well, where has this come from?
Honestly, with 10 laps to go, I expected him to win it.
Oh, 100%. I thought this has got Max nicking it in like the last 2 laps all over it.
Definitely. I thought it was a really, really, really good drive.
It'll be interesting to see how he can... Because, don't get me wrong, those McLarens look borderline untouchable. They look quick. So it'll be interesting to see how Verstappen can sort of drag his Red Bull to try and fight them, if he can.
I think he's going to have to hope that the dynamic in McLaren drastically...
Yeah, he's got to hope that their papaya rules 2 number 1 drivers, whatever they call it.
I think that might happen as well.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like they could. We saw it in Monza last year. They if they're not told what to do and they're given freedom, they can run into each other. Because I think Lando and Oscar are 2 drivers of sort of the same pedigree. It's almost the same as putting someone like Russell and Leclerc together, putting Verstappen and Hamilton together.
Yes,
they're gonna clash heads.
I agree, definitely, most definitely.
And P1, Mr. Lando Norris.
I'll give him an A-star as well.
Yeah, I liked this win. I thought all he did was he put his head down and he focused on himself. We didn't see mistakes. We didn't see him running. We did see him run wide. We didn't see him, potentially bottling it, which is...
He didn't crumble. I think that was the biggest thing for me.
He dealt with the pressure really well, and I think it's his championship to lose almost.
I wouldn't go as far to say that after the first round, but it's looking as though for the first 6 races at least, he's going to be the one to beat.
Oh yeah, I think if he lays down a precedent where he wins, 4 out of the opening 6, or even wins like 6 out of the opening 6, then people are going to go, well, fair enough. I think he is now championship worthy.
He's definitely championship worthy, and I think he's the person that McLaren are going to look to. Although Oscar won't agree with that, and that's where I bring in the whole first and second driver thing again. That is going to bite McLaren on the arse soon.
Zach Brown was on about it on the Sky Sports broadcast. Crofty was like, so are they allowed to race? And he was like, yeah, man, they can race all they want. And they were like, Oscar, stop trying to overtake Lando. And he was like, but I'm quicker. And they're like, no, listen. He's like, okay, fine.
Yeah, that's not gonna slide for long.
No, it's not going to bode well.
I'll give him 2 races. If he's up the front like he was this round, then in 3 rounds' time he's going to be trying to get past Lando, and that's when the rows will start.
Well, that was our grading. We call it grading, can't we?
Yeah.
Of the top 10 drivers of the Australian Grand Prix, and that brings an end to our Australian Grand Prix review. We hope you've enjoyed the first episode of this new podcast. Stay tuned for later this week, where we are going to be doing a China Grand Prix preview, which is at 7 a.m. Is it 7 a.m. or 6 a.m. Sunday?
Not entirely sure.
I want to say 7. I just don't like the fact that F1 are bullying people who live
It is 7.
in Europe. But yeah, so we're going to be doing a Grand Prix review for China for this coming weekend. So stay tuned for that. We hope you've enjoyed. I've been Max.
I've been Reef.
And this has been the Push to Pass podcast.